Hi, everyone. It is 4:07 on April 3rd, 2022, and this is the Morgellons Call of the Week. And I'm Robin from Western Mass. I'm so grateful to be here. It's a cold, rainy, snowy day here, but being on this call makes me warm and fuzzy. So, I am so glad that I found Richard Kuhn's, his book, The King Diet, and you guys. I'm so grateful. It has changed my life and given me hope, purpose, and health, which those are all three good things. And it's thanks to Richard. Richard is probably the world's best expert on Morgellons and other skin parasites because he's been in the trenches. He has done the research. He has found things that work if you work them. And and he's here with us every week. Every week, Richard is here on this call. He takes questions through email. He's here to help people get well and get their lives back. And so I'd like to introduce Richard Kuhn's, author of How to Get Your Life Back from Morgellons and Other Skin Parasites.
Thank you, Robin. It's always wonderful to be here to support each and every one of you. I never, ever thought in my life that I would be here in this capacity. I thought that these organisms would have ended my life decades ago. Fortunately, I learned, starting from knowing nothing about them to only speculating that maybe I was infested with some kind of mite, and to be going to doctor after doctor, specialist after specialist, and finding only answers that worked a few days, and then all hell would break loose again. So never in a million years did I ever think that I'd write a book about it, much less revise it 10 times to make it the 11th edition, and know something about this strange phenomenon. Not only something about this strange phenomenon called Morgellons, but all of, well, I can't say all because I'm still learning, most of the cofactors that go into making Morgellons the infinite, miserable disease that it is. But strangely enough, as I've learned, Morgellons is not a big deal. It is catapulted to being a big deal with all the cofactors. And you know what? Most of the cofactors aren't a big deal. It's when you mix them together, they become the perfect storm, become the Hurricane Sandys that have massive destruction in the human body, in the psyche, mental ability. So, because some of what I'm going to be sharing and recommending is technical in nature, the FDA requires me to inform everyone on this call that none of us, myself nor Robin or any of our coaches, are medical doctors. Before you start the King Diet or accept any of our recommendations, some of which we will provide in this video, make a list of them. If you sent in the questionnaire, and takes me about a half hour to evaluate it, it's free. I send you back a complete list of recommendations from A to Z, dealing with basically all the cofactors. And You take those recommendations or any recommendations we may make here to your doctor, your primary physician, and say, hey, look, I understand that maybe you think I'm delusional or you don't but is there any problem if I were to do this diet? You can spell the diet out, and these are the recommendations these people are making. Will any of this interfere with any health problems I'm presently experiencing? So that is what I'm required to tell you to do. The AMA also wants me to inform you that, and remind you that, again, we don't have the medical training. We know where the brain is and we know where the buttocks are, but, there's a lot in between. And so we are not trained to diagnose, to cure, to mitigate, or treat any physical disease or skin disease, okay? But we are allowed to educate. So we can educate you how to utilize the King diet for your advantage. Don't ask me how it works. I mean, that's like asking a baby how to make its first step after it's made its first step. That's like saying, well, honey, how did you know how to make that step? After you learn how to step, okay, I don't know how it works. It just works when you make it work, all right? So we can educate you how to utilize the diet. We can educate you how to clean these organisms that are unknown to the CDC, or the CDC claims they don't exist, like they claim Morgellons is not a real disease. It's too much stress. It's a mental issue. When it comes to things like columbella, springtails, also known as snow fleas, they are not acknowledged to exist on human flesh, or if they are there, they would simply be washed away in a shower. They do not recognize mites other than scabies or demodex or dust mites having any impact on human health. Before we can train you, we can educate you. We're not going to train you. We're going to educate you how to clean these organisms out of your skin and out of your environment. And we can direct you in the direction of supplements to build health and immune functioning. That's what we are allowed to do. The subject of today comes from an email I received from one of the participants in the program. Mary, would you read that email?
I sure will. It says, "Hi, Richard. I'm trying to stick to the diet, but being very hard. It's very hard being in Antigua on a sailboat. I keep hearing biofilm. What is it? Thanks, Richard. Have a great day. I keep going back to the book for lots of helpful information." And Judy.
Poor person stuck on a sailboat near Antigua. Everybody, life's dream. Wow, great. Well, biofilm. This is one of the things that I've heard many people talk about. I had no idea really what it was going back in the 2008, 2010 era, even up until more recently. People would tell me they have this goo, defined as goo, coming out of their skin. Some people would describe it as white goo, black goo. Another email that came in that I wasn't able to find to have Mary read was talking about, hey, I've got this film all over my body. I don't have any itching. I don't have any biting. What the hell is it? Well, basically anything that turns out as kind of a film is biofilm. And what does Google say about it, Robin?
So I have a couple of things I'd like to read. One was from your email that you sent out, and another one was There were so many definitions, but this one seems to be the easiest to understand. Biofilms are a collective of one or more types of microorganisms that can grow on many different surfaces. Microorganisms that form biofilms include bacteria, fungi, and protists. One common example of a biofilm is dental plaque, a slimy buildup of bacteria that forms on the surfaces of teeth. Pond scum is another example. Then Richard, in his email today, said biofilm is a complex structure of microbiome having different bacterial colonies or single type of cells in a group, and they adhere to a surface. These cells are embedded in extracellular polymeric substances, like the fibers even that Morgellons creates, a matrix which is generally composed of eDNA proteins and polysaccharides and has shown high resistance to antibiotics. Oh, that might not have been what you wrote. I have one more thing to read. Let's see. Biofilm formation is an important adaptation and survival strategy commonly employed by bacteria. Bacteria in the biofilm are protected from adverse environmental factors and immune responses. Chemical gradients generated throughout the biofilm enable bacteria to exist in a wide range of physiological states, thereby providing insurance effects in changing environments. Biofilms can be composed of multiple species that interact with each other.
Thank you. So, wow. From something we knew nothing about to something that is really out there in space. You know, how does it apply to us? Well, generally, as I said earlier, I really didn't know much about biofilm, and I'm not really an expert today about biofilm, but I kind of have an idea. Well, you know, basically almost everybody who's dealing with Morgellons deals with some kind of biofilm, all right? And if you do logic, a lot of people get their lives back. Many people get their lives back. So something we are doing in our program seems to take care of biofilm. So we're going to look at what those things are that we're doing. But you don't have to have Morgellons to have a problem with biofilm. As Robin pointed out, one of the things she read, dental plaque. That's something all of us have. You know, the bacteria, there's plaque is formed and seals in the bacteria, in the dead bacteria, and to the teeth. You got to go to the dentist every 6 months or so and have that plaque removed. So I don't think there's any source that says biofilm serves any good purpose to humans. It seems to serve as a defense mechanism for the different types of organisms, bacteria or fungi that take up residence in our bodies to just make it a little more difficult to serve them the eviction notice. So, but the bottom line is, as I said before, it generally isn't a big deal when it comes to our protocol. And there are probably several things that play into this. One is the diet, the King diet. Like I said before, I don't know how or why it works, but it does. And apparently it has some impact on the ability of these organisms to produce biofilm, whether they be bacteria or fungi. The King diet is probably even more of an antifungal diet than the Candida diet is, even more limiting. Of course, when we're dealing with Candida, and if, you know, like someone sent in a questionnaire that I evaluated a little earlier, and he had the good fortune of, he's in the UK, and he has the good fortune of having a homeopathic expert who he had do an analysis and find out that he's dealing with candida, he's dealing with protozoan, and he's also dealing with a form of amoeba. All right? These are all different kinds of complications. And many of these, again, are simply cofactors and oftentimes are not a big deal except when we bring in Morgellons and then all of a sudden we end up with a perfect storm. But candida, so in the evaluate or his questionnaire, he noted that he used to have lousy eating habits, a lot of sugar. He's gotten rid of that even before he came to found my program. But the bottom line is he's also dealing with candida, and so he will want to take white rice out of the king diet. Depending on how candida has impacted him, he may even want to remove all of the grain, the millet, the rye, and even the spelt for a period of time until he gets in order and the candida dealt with. So the king diet basically is number one in dealing with biofilm, in my opinion. Now, what else? Well, I don't think I would be here today with this call if I hadn't stumbled upon nature's gift, the debriding soap. The analysis is it's bioform carbon, which is liquid carbon. It has the ability, when applied to the skin, either through the bath or through the creams and lotions that we have, of disrupting bacteria, disrupting apparently biofilm too that protects it, and fungi. So that's number two. We have it also as a mouthwash. So in the mouth, many people have reported that it has been dramatic in the impact on the biofilm and destroying the biofilm in the mouth. I don't claim it to do any of this, okay? I make no claims. I'm simply sharing what people have shared with me. Their experiences have been using the Nature's Gift mouthwash, which also can double up as what we call a body wipe, something you can wipe your body with. So you can use diluted Nature's Gift, 1:72 ratio, or 1:64, I believe, and you simply spray it on your skin, or this mouthwash, you can, it's more concentrated, it has cinnamon in it, has peppermint in it, it has also ionic minerals. And you can apply it to the skin also, and that will also disrupt biofilm, in my opinion. Again, no claim, in my opinion. So there is an incredible arsenal here with a king diet and Nature's Gift. Now, internally, I only began to understand what biofilm really was a few years ago after I had beaten Lyme disease, and I started doing the research on writing the ebook that's on Amazon. It's a free report on bestmorgellonscure.com. It's called Lyme Disease Doesn't Have to Own You Anymore. Lyme disease scared the hell out of me back in the 70s. I had happened during my first marriage. We met this young couple, and she had Lyme disease, and it had basically crippled her and ended her life. That was scarier to me than cancer, because, you can walk out in the woods and get bit by a tick, and if you don't get that tick out fast enough or deal with it, it could kill you. It really could. And it took a long time for the doctors even to recognize what Lyme disease was, or that it even needed treatment. So that was like about a 20-year lag before they started treating Lyme disease with doxycycline. I think a 10-day thing of doxycycline, which if you catch it earlier, as the rash just begins to form, that usually knocks it out early. But personally, I never had the rash. I learned about Lyme disease being a complicating factor with these parasites through communicating with the late Dr. Harvey, who was my first doctor that really was working with skin parasites. All the other doctors I worked with were general, dermatologists, general practitioner, although I did work with one very knowledgeable dermatologist who knew about Primazod ORAP being playing a role in dealing with mites. He had reported that there was a county fair in which one of the tents was infested with mites, and everybody went into that tent, came out infected, and they used Primazod to deal with it. So that's where my first experience with Primazod came in, but that has nothing to do with biofilm. So what we're back to is discussing Lyme disease, which has many different cofactors and also different forms that it can morph into. It's a spirochete that has some kind of intelligence that can morph from one form to another form, and it produces biofilm, which can make it impervious. So ideally, the Lyme disease came into my life not through a tick bite, and you often see maybe headlines about Morgellons, a tick-borne disease, or Lyme. For some people, yes, but not everybody. I mean, 90% of us, according to Marianne Middleveen and Dr. Strickland in their research and their pilot studies, find that there are one of two types of spirochetes that they know of in Morgellons patients. Now, that's not to say that everybody who has Lyme disease has Morgellons, all right? They're saying of Morgellons people, and to be a Morgellons person, to suffer from Morgellons, it has to be that you have filaments or fibers growing from your skin or lesions that are abnormal. They can be very fine filaments that you can only see with a 60-power scope. Most people don't have a 60-power scope around to look at their skin, okay, to see these little tiny fibers. But you will see an accumulation generally. They accumulate like lint balls or cotton-like substance, and you see them in your bedding and in your clothing. That's an indication to me that you're also dealing with Morgellons, and the filaments are very fine as they shed from your skin and they collect in the bedding and clothing, and that's how you see them or find them. Other people, the filaments are very visible. They can be, I think that all of them are fluorescent, or you will see them under a black light. They can be red, they can be blue, they can be green, they can be white, they can be black, they can be of different thicknesses, but this is characteristic of Morgellons disease. So 90% of us then, according to their research, are dealing with some kind of Lyme disease, and that means it's a spirochetal infection. There are also people who believe that many people who have Morgellons are also dealing with syphilis, which is also another kind of spirochetal disease. So it's sometimes good to roll it out and simply have blood tests done or look at the different symptoms, look it up. I'm not an expert on syphilis. I don't know what all the symptoms are, but that is also a possibility because it's also spirochetal and dealt with primarily, as you know, with, what is that antibiotic that is 100 years old?
Penicillin?
Penicillin, yes. Effectively dealt with penicillin. All right, so it comes down to Lyme disease can be contracted through mites. The update that went out today was about seeing Columbella springtails from a different, I don't know if you got to see it, but the pictures were beautiful. The microscopy was wonderful. What I learned there, I always had this backwards, and maybe it comes both ways. I don't know. I always thought that mites were the carrier of springtails and brought the vector that brought, but from the microscopy, it shows Columbella carrying mites. So, which comes first, the horse or the buggy? I don't know, but they both seem to come at the same time. And it doesn't matter which is really the vector, whether it's backwards or not. It indicates that the Columbella is the vector for mites to come to our human body and make life miserable as well. Last week's segment that we did was about win the war of the mites. So if they can be a cofactor and they can be a miserable cofactor, and it's important to get rid of these cofactors so that you can really take care of Morgellons simply and easily and quickly. By the way, the antidote for Morgellons, and I'm not making a claim, I'm just saying what I've learned and what I've read and what makes sense to me, is simply boron, as much as 30 milligrams a day. We have 3 milligram tablets in our store. So that's up to 10 a day. You can start at 6 or 7 a day and work your way up to 10. Also, they're available in 30 milligram tablets through shop4morgellons.cure, which also supplies the other medications, the nitinpyran, the lefiniran, the the Fenben, the equivalent to albendazole, and also ivermectin. But that is number one, up to 30 milligrams a day, and to alkalize your body. Generally, it's suggested with apple cider vinegar. But apple cider vinegar, unfortunately, feeds, if you consume it, springtails. So by trying to get rid of one thing, you're causing another thing to flourish. But the point is to alkalize, and apple cider vinegar isn't the only thing that you can alkalize your system with. So we've done segments on this before. You can use baking soda. That helps alkalize your system. Teaspoon on empty stomach twice a day. You can also use our Nature's Gift ionic minerals to alkalize your system. Many people go out there spending, I don't know, how much is this alkaline water cost that you see? I'm guessing it's got to be at least $2.50 for a bottle of this alkaline water, which has been the big craze. Can you imagine $2.50 for a bottle of alkaline water to alkalize your system when you can use our Nature's Gift ionic minerals, drink it throughout the day, a pH of 10.5, and what is it, about $24 a month for a supply of ionic minerals to not only alkalize your body, but also have all the minerals in bioavailable form? I mean, it's a no-brainer, it's no-brainer, but, well, anyway. So back to biofilm. So if you're dealing with Lyme disease, and if you go to an LLMD, he will start, most of them, I'd say probably, I don't know if anybody's done this research, but if you read my report or the book on Amazon, Lyme disease doesn't have to own you anymore. It points out the different approaches. It could be salt and vitamin C as one approach to dealing with Lyme disease. It could be rifing, biofeedback, using certain frequencies. That's what this is to deal with Lyme disease. But I would speculate that probably 95% of the LLMDs, Lyme literate medical doctors in this country, go the route of antibiotics. So if you get diagnosed as Lyme disease, and again, getting the test is basically a waste of time, because of all the false positives and false negatives, and not knowing whether you have it or not after you've had the test done, after you spent oodles of dollars. But microscopy is the only way that I would recommend getting a real test, and that could be done through like the Fry Labs in Scottsdale, Arizona, I believe it is. But aside from the microscopy, Dr. Axe's opinion is that you're wasting your money. And through our basic Life of PAC program, so the LMDs use basically antibiotics. Now, if you hit the Lyme disease with the antibiotics, and they haven't seen the antibiotics before, you whack them out. You really do. But the problem is, after you start whacking them out, all of the toxicity that's released in your body causes tremendous Herxheimer reactions. And they got to stop the antibiotics, otherwise you're going to die. It could get that serious. So that's what happens. They stop the antibiotics. Now what happens? Well, the spirochete is pretty damn smart. It starts releasing the biofilm. The biofilm, so that when you renew the antibiotics, after your system is no longer being threatened, the antibiotics can't get through the biofilm to do much. Or the spirochete will morph into another form and hide, so the antibiotics can't even get to it. All right? So this is where I learned about biofilm through my own experience of almost having died from Lyme disease myself. But I learned about it after I had fully recovered. So in my book, Lyme disease doesn't have to own you anymore, the first thing I recommend, again, I'm not a doctor, not treating, not curing, but I can educate you how to improve health and immune functioning, is our Pack of Life program. The Pack of Life is Nature's Gift multiple vitamins, our ionic minerals, which I talked about before, boosting glutathione with Max 1, and Garcillum, allicin, which is a natural antibiotic, natural antiprotozoan, natural antifungal, natural parasitic. Again, I'm not claiming this. Just go to Wikipedia, type in acillin, and see what it says. It will say that, okay? So you put those four things into play, and you may not even need treatment because you're going to build health and immune functioning. Now, the biofilm that is still left over from maybe other sources in your body or whatever, well, we also have our kinase enzyme formula. Now, this enzyme formula, we brought it into the store because it deals with assimilation of chitin, chitin. Chitin is one of the building blocks of fungal organisms. But as I read about this in the description by Claire Labs, who manufactures it, they don't actually promote it for what we use it for. They promote it as a biofilm killer, a biofilm breaker downer. So when you put together the tools that we have, it seems that biofilm is not a big issue in the long run, assuming you make the King diet work, which is fundamental and most important of all. Well, that kind of wraps up the biofilm topic. You have anything did you ever have any issues with biofilm yourself, Robin?
Not really, but I did want to say one thing. I had someone I was coaching, and they got on the diet, and then they texted me in a panic saying, "Oh no, my biofilm is going away. What should I do?"
It happens, yeah. A lot of this stuff, these cofactors, are dealt with pretty effectively with our protocol.
Right.
Mary, did you have any experience with biofilm or any problems with it?
I think I do. It's hard for me to tell though, because my body doesn't function like everybody else's. But it seems to me when I'm in the tub, my legs get really slimy. And
that's the biofilm coming out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And of course you're using the Nature's Gift in the tub?
Absolutely. I love
Great.
that stuff.
So that's probably bringing it out, and then you shower off, and good. Okay, great. All right. Well, I guess that wraps up this segment, and then we'll go into the Q&A.